Okay, all of you are here because somebody, how many is here just to learn on their own? How many just paid for the ticket, flew out here? It's on billboards all over North America, this course, isn't it? So somebody in your company, or you said to somebody in your company, I want to go learn. We need to learn. And I'm here to tell you, in May I just passed my 7 millionth air mile traveling in produce all around the world. But I want to tell you something. There's a lot of tribal knowledge out there. All of you from Chicago, you know all the stuff going on in Chicago, but you know what's going on in Dallas or New York or Boston or LA or, no, probably not. I'm just saying that unless you read it in a trade magazine, unless somebody older than you, older, gray hair, you know, taught you something, you had to learn it on your own. And a lot of that stuff is what I like to call tribal knowledge. Because you learn from somebody you learn to learn somebody from learn, but you're here to break all that. Because there really is a science to this. And you've got to go back and tell people when there's something wrong, you see something wrong, you've got to say something. Because that's your job. They invested in you to go back and teach others. And having done this for 31 years in produce, and all of you know these people in life, what do you want to know? Huh? What do you want to know? They're spoon feeding you. I'm here, or when I go to your facility, to do this. Here it is. It's all out there. There's no job security in this. I can out-teach myself in another job. So just remember that. Share your knowledge. Don't think that you know it all by hiding it. Share that knowledge, please. And there's some real good stuff you're going to learn from here. And it's all overwhelming at one time, but there's resources. There's people you're going to meet. There's professors you're going to meet. There's UC Davis website, best website in the world for produce. I didn't go to UC Davis. I'm just trying to tell you, it really is, because I work all around the world and I've used it. And that produce facts is in French, Spanish, English, and that often used Arabic. I think you people around the Detroit area. But I'm just saying that, you know, it's in those languages and it can be shared with people, so use it. Anyway, that's all.
I'm going to hand off that to you. So, Dennis is absolutely right. We came here to explore opportunity. Opportunities is what this is all about. We have a lot of science being talked about today, but how do we actualize that science and put it into the real world where we all exist? That's what we're trying to go for. So what's trending? Why are we here? Well, we know value add is trending. It's important. It's booming in popularity. Health and wellness is really driving a lot of what's going on in value add. Our ability to drive products into this market, good products that people want, is really helping this category. Also, it comes down to how they're spending their money. People spend on what they like. What you're saying, Dennis, about visual?
We buy with our eyes, we return with our taste buds. That's it in a nutshell.
That's it. Whether that's a whole product or a fresh cut product, it holds true. So continued growth in this category. Value-added fruits and vegetables combined to represent 6.3% of the total produce sales. That is a huge piece of a produce department. Value-added fruit realm, snacking is a key reason for purchase in fruits. And Dennis and I are going to really concentrate on fruits today and climacteric fruits. But think of that, 99% of the fruit destined for value add is going towards snacking. If you snack, who wants to eat something cruddy? If I'm walking through the airport, how does that work? Do I go say, I want to find the worst snack I can find, and I want to eat it? No, I don't. I don't travel 7 million miles like Dennis, but I travel a lot.
I'm old.
I'll attest to that. He's old. So, what does it represent, this value add, fresh cut fruit, to over the last 7 years, 6 years, up 38%. Back to what Dennis was talking about before. We didn't come here because boy, this is just fun stuff. I want a few days of science. Dennis might do that. I wouldn't be here for that. I want to know how I can keep those numbers moving in that direction, how I can take advantage of that growth curve. What's really neat to me is when I look at the top 5 fresh fruits for dollars, berries. Everyone sees it in a store right now. The growth of the berry category is huge. They're up 82%. Melons 59%. One that's near and dear to Dennis and I's heart is mangoes. We both work with the National Mango Board. Our job is to work with ethylene and ripening in retail and food service to make mangoes sell more.
One a day, that's all we ask. Mango.
Here keeps coming back to this. Dollars drive decisions. Who in this room knows of a little company called Amazon? I'll bet you somewhere in this room today, somebody is going to get something delivered by Amazon. Is there anybody that's getting anything delivered by Amazon? Bingo, 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 bingo. I win. What happens is simply this. We're changing. We're adapting as a society. The products that we position are changing rapidly also. The products you all will position will change rapidly to adapt to this new reality. We did a little Dennis and Tim show for the ethylene workshop earlier this year. We talked about this change from brick and mortar to this online piece. What happens? Everyone can sell toilet paper, whether it's in a store or online. Dog food's easy too. What's hard is produce. What's hard is fresh. What changes the ballgame is consistency in fresh. Being able to drive flavor and consistency. Ethylene can do that. But really, we can't talk about just that. We've got to talk about shrink, inventory turns, warehouse costs, space allocation, merchandising changes, supplier disruption, labor concerns. Those are all real things to everyone in this room. They're as real as applying ethylene to a climacteric fruit that we're going to get to, I promise you. But we know one thing. We have to address these, but at the end of the day, it's all about delivering consistency and flavorful fruit. So how do we do it? We embrace change. What is that? Hard to teach an old dog new tricks? Dennis knows the tricks. We don't have to teach him. He understands how ethylene is changing our environment. The consumer demand for fresh cut exotic fruits is there. We see that from the VP of marketing for Del Monte. We work with Del Monte. We talk to Del Monte. We talk to suppliers like you. We help the industry understand this embracing change will affect change. Consumers are more sophisticated than ever. Everything that we're developing now is going to change. Just like we come back year after year to learn more at a workshop like this. We have to stay up on what we're doing. As we grow, the industry grows. That knowledge, that technical base of knowledge has to be relevant. So when we're looking at opportunities, we have to go back to the numbers. What's growing? I talk about it almost every day of the week. Mangoes right now make up 36% of the exotic set. Think about that. When you go to a store, I always feel like, where's Waldo? Where's the mangoes? I gotta find them. They're hidden somewhere. Where are they usually next to, Dennis?
They're cousin the coconut,
They are.
same size basket.
What does coconut make up? Oh, a big 2% of exotics, but they get the same space allocation. When you're taking this information back and when you're thinking about items to bring on, you might want to consider what the trends are telling us, whether it's whole fruit or fresh cut. We're going to want to identify what our consumer says. So as commodity boards, and Dennis and I represent the pear industry and the mango industry, we do attitude and usage studies. Really important to the numbers. 82% of the consumers report they like mango flavor, but 27% of non-mango purchasers say the reason for not buying is they don't know how to select. They buy mangoes on impulse, and when people don't buy, what's the reason? They're disappointed because the mangoes aren't ripe enough. What can help us there, Dennis?
Ethylene and keep them out of refrigeration.
Key. You hear it over and over and over and over again today. Refrigeration, cold chain, supply chain. It is essential to everything that we do with these products. When we trend forward, and we're all trend forwarding in this room with value add and considering what we're doing, we have to look at what that consumption is. What does it look like? So for me, mangoes are the new avocado. It's as clear as the numbers right there. We trend, mangoes are above the trend line. We're in orange, avocados in green. We're 10 years behind. They started earlier as an industry with the marketing of that product and what they did with ethylene and ripening. We're 10 years behind, but we know we'll double consumption in the next 10 years. That's one commodity, mangoes. Change is healthy for the bottom line. Think about that a little bit. Dennis talked about tribal knowledge. Tribal knowledge is good in a lot of ways, but it also can slow us down. It can really change the way we think, or it can stagnate the way we think. I look at old categories. Apples. What were they? Red Delicious, Golden Delicious, Macintosh, Citrus, Valencias, Navels, melons, seeded watermelons. Anybody remember a seeded watermelon? LSL cantaloupe, long shelf life cantaloupe. I'm in the melon industry as well. I hate LSL cantaloupes. Grapes, Thompson seedless. Now let's get down to us. Fresh cut, salads and melons. Salads and melons. That's old school. Still relevant, but old school. We've really moved past that. Now we're in apples. We have Honeycrisp and 80 other varieties. Citrus, cuties, halos, we see them everywhere. Watermelons, personalized watermelons. I love that item. I think it's great, it's trendy, it fits our consumer style. Grapes, the cotton candy grapes. Anybody tried those in this room? They're really cool. They taste like cotton candy. I love them. Fresh cut.
We'll have some this afternoon.
Yay! Fresh cut. Now there are multiple varieties and ripened offerings. The varieties are so immense, I'm actually trying to categorize all these varieties I see in retailers all over the United States. And it is really difficult to do. But change is healthy for the bottom line. So how are we going to do it? We're going to chart a new path. And we're going to chart it via innovation and technology. For us, it's about fresh and flavorful. If we're not concentrating on that, we lose. Period. People want good product. When you pay a premium for a product, you want a premium product. Fresh cut should mean fresh cut. Flavorful should be part of fresh cut.
Not a distressed load you picked up and you can take the skin off it and change it a little bit.
That's
what
right.
a lot of fresh cut does.
That's where the industry started. Tribal knowledge. Kick load, send it over. I'll figure it out. Ripe is essential. Consistency, and that's where I'm going to leave it to Dennis, is the key. Consistency is what you're all going for in every product that you develop. What's going to get us there on some of these products is ethylene.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, I'm going to go back to something. You remember that big circle of tropical fruit? What one item would you thought would have been on there? And the big circle, mango was the number one on that circle. What do you think was there 20 years ago? Avocado, banana. Banana already left that a long time ago.
A long time.
When I started working with avocados back 31 years ago, it was the same thing, a little obscure thing, only known in certain areas. But food service drove that train and drove it hard. And all of a sudden people wanted to make guacamole at home. They wanted avocados at home. And the thing that made that program work was ethylene and ripening rooms. Do you know what it was like for me to go in and tell somebody to put a half a load of avocados in a ripening room at that time? 1988, 1989? You know how many people told me I was nuts? Who's going to pay for it when we make guacamole? Everybody said it. And we had a problem. Ripening rooms only went to 55 degrees because bananas didn't have to go any colder. So a right process on avocados takes it down to 42 or 40. And all of you holding your avocados at 38 degrees? No, no, no. No matter what anybody tells you. Because when you open them up and they're black and gray inside, we talked about that earlier, black around the pit, that's chilling injury. Black in those vascular bundles, and you see it everywhere now because there's this tribal knowledge that, oh yeah, we can take them down to 38 degrees. I wish Dr. Mary Lou Pay was here because she'd tell you. Temperature, it's about temperature.
I want to talk a little bit about that tribal knowledge because I was one of those guys. I had a produce company in Los Angeles. We did repacking for Cisco. And there was this big craze. I don't know, some of you have tried the item, guacamole. We might have seen it. All of Cisco's customers wanted ripe avocados. So they came to me and said, give us ripe avocados. So what did I do? I don't know. So what do I go to? Heat. Heat sounds good to me. That helps things ripen. So I took the avocados, went to a store, bought a heater. What else do we have that can maybe hold in the heat? Plastic, cellophane. So I wrapped those, wrapped them all up. These are $60 a box avocados. I own these avocados and I'm doing this, following this. I did not know that Dennis was on this other side working on the science. If it was left to me today, we would still be ripening avocados with a heater and some plastic.
They still do it up there.
That's what changes. Groups like this help us all change, help us all evolve.
Okay, how many of you have heard of Holy Guacamole? 2 friends of mine started that company. I went down to Mexico to teach them how to ripen the avocados. I didn't build the ripening room, but it showed them how to use the ripening room so that they have consistency. All of a sudden, Yucatan Fresh, Cabo Fresh did the same thing. Telephone rings, hey, can you come to Mexico? Believe it or not, they ripen them before they process them because there's a reason for it. It creates uniformity. And when your money's involved and you want consistency and uniformity, you've got to have one magic thing called ethylene.
I'll keep you moving here.
Okay. Well, back up a minute. Look at it. People who want fresh pears, they increase their sales. People used to be afraid of giving Bartlett's in the beginning of the season, early season. We give them ethylene to make them taste better because they're usually stored and then they come out of cold storage and then they have different taste attributes. Next. But here's what ripening does for all fruit in the climacteric fruit group. It creates, yes, softening. That's just a little part of ripening. It's flavonoid changes inside, color changes inside, sugar changes inside, all those things going on that work together that make juice and make a good eating experience. Okay, so we've talked about this before, but just to hit you over the head with it, remember in college, when you're there and they tap that ruler on the board, or he says, you better remember this, or he underlines it twice, that means it's going to be on the test. This is going to be on the test. So learn this. But anyway, it gets better. And ethylene is the only thing, let me repeat that. Ethylene is the only thing that will convert starch to sugar in the climacteric fruit group. Nothing else will. And people say that, you know, certain fruits produce certain amounts of ethylene. Yes, they do, but they don't do enough exogenous ethylene to create uniformity within everything in that container or that pallet or that box. So external ethylene is applied. Next, please. There's your list again. There's more, but next. I can't tell you how many people think they're at home ripening a pineapple. You're fermenting that pineapple. You're not ripening it. And those people that pull the leaf so that produce manager has to pick up those leaves, that just means the leaf is loose. It has nothing to do with a pineapple. You want the best tasting pineapple? Pick the heaviest one and the greenest one. I guarantee you it's going to have more sugar because I've tested hundreds of pineapples. I've won a lot of bets on this. Sugar weighs more than water. It's as simple as that. Next, please. Okay, conditioned product. You have a texture change, you have pressure reduction, and it unlocks the flavor. Remember the little zipper? Okay. Next. Here's what's really interesting. The Pear Bureau, we did some studies a while back. The reason consumers didn't buy pears was flavor. Okay, I can understand that. We've done some bad things to pears in the past that makes it taste like cardboard. So we sell them with caramel dip and marshmallow fluff or whatever to create some flavor. Next, please. Here's the main reason people buy pear. They buy it for flavor. Now, if you go back to that other slide,
Yep.
they didn't.
They didn't buy.
And then the next one, they did. So, what's that tell me? What's it tell you? No, there's opportunity. There's opportunity to get
That's
people
on the test too. Opportunity.
opportunity. You know, we're all here about opportunities. What can we take back? What can we learn? So when you develop any kind of ripening program, you need commitment, you need communication, real important. Honestly, just real important. You need equipment to do it right, you need education. Next, please. So, you need supply chain. This is a Walmart DC, and we're working with some mangoes and tell them about different things. There's a tool there called the penetrometer. You see a garlic press, which gives you really good juice. Now, how many of you have seen somebody do a soluble solid content test? They say it's Brix, but Brix is a sugar test. That's titrated. But when you use a refractometer, you're looking at soluble solid content. It reads a bunch of stuff in there. So how many of you seen them take a plastic bag, put a bunch of fruit in there, and mash it up just to get some juice out of it? Bad science, really bad. Notice there's a garlic press there. That works so much better. But I've seen it. People still do it. They take an aggregated amount of different fruits, you know, or pieces of fruit in a given lot and say, here's how we find out. It's like not good. Anyway, next one.
Can I take a step back? Because Beth talked about these things. Penetrometer, having something to measure your bricks.
Not this, not a squeezing thing on the penetrometer part.
These are essential. Dennis and I travel around the country, and I cannot tell you how many QC operations we walk in that these two tools are not there, or they have spider webs on those tools.
Because we got these magic hands. I've been squeezing fruit for 31 years. I can tell you what I want to eat, but I can't tell you where that limit is on if it should be kicked or not. They have penetrometers for that. And they have a different tip on them, believe it or not.
Refractometer, same thing. Those two pieces of tools, and Dennis said this to me early on, and it really resonated with me. We make millions of dollars in decisions as an industry every day, by sight, by hand, by these old methodologies. We think we know. We don't know. I don't know. I touch a lot of mangoes, a lot of pears, see a lot of fruit. Without those two pieces of equipment, I'm blind.
There you go, penetrometer. And that is at a pear canning facility in China, largest pear canning facility in the world. They had no idea what a penetrometer was before I came there. They were just squeezing the fruit. So, next.
What else do you see when you go into places, Dennis? Your second. The tip.
Oh yeah, it's really important. There's two tips in there. One's used for apples and watermelons, and most other fruits use the 8mm tip. There was a really smaller tip before, a 5mm, that was used for some tips, but they don't use it anymore. They've pretty much gone to those two. Okay, ripening rooms. Where's it going to happen? There's all kinds of it. Fruit doesn't have a brain. That's what's really interesting. It just needs certain conditions to further its ripening. And forced air has been really good, because I remember the days when people had to air stack bananas and put them in a big room and try ripen them. And it was difficult. But the technology's come a long way. That's the one on the right is from a place in Japan. The one on the left is a pear shipper. Next, please. And you can use, there's newer systems that do it. This one on the left is a jet system. This one on the right, a guy way back in there, you can't see it. There's a fan, and they just use a tarp on it. And they turn the fan on to pull the air out of the middle chamber. Air's got to go somewhere. It takes a path of least resistance, and it's going to go through those banana boxes to get in the middle and then to be pulled out by the fan. So you can make these really simple, but if you have a big operation and your company is a multi-million-dollar operation, you kind of want to go with the science. So when your customers come in and look at it, they don't think you've tinkerboard something together and, you know, erector set and built a ripening room, but it works. Next, please. So here.
Must be the old presentation.
Okay. Thanks. So what happens is you need circulation of that air, because that air is going to move things around. Venting is really important because, you know, before we were talking about carbon dioxide, and I don't know if how many of you here have actually been in a ripening room? How many of you have walked into one? Do you ever walk into one and you get a little bit of a chest pain or you get a little bit of a headache the further you go in that room? That's carbon dioxide. That's not ethylene. Ethylene is basically a odorless, colorless. It's got a little bit of a sweet smell, but really not. And if it's a banana room, you're smelling 65 different volatiles given off from that banana as it ripens. If you're in an avocado room, you get it. Avocados produce 2.5 times more CO2 than a banana does. So CO2, that's a bad thing. When I first started doing this, it was less than 10% CO2 in a ripening room. Then it went to 5%. Now it's less than 1%. We've got better at testing for it, and we understand it better. What do we do with modified atmosphere? What do we put in it? CO2. When I first started ripening, we used tanked ethylene. What do you think the propellant was in that tank? 93 to 95% CO2, 3 to 5% ethylene, or sometimes 2.5 to 4%, depending on what it was. All this has changed. That little generator has changed. There's two companies that make this gel. Denatured alcohol is what it is. It goes through a grid and it makes ethylene. It works really good. Fruit doesn't need a lot of it. I go into most rooms I test for it, they're 300 to 400 parts per million. You really only need about 50 to 100 parts per million. That's it. If you have good air circulation through there, fruit doesn't need a lot to get it going, but it needs it. And then the time. Okay, time. All of you are let's say you're all bakers. You don't do your chocolate chip cookies and your apple pie at the same time, but you use an oven. Ripening rooms. It depends on the time and the temperature, the recipe for what particular fruit you're going to be putting in there. And what I found with most ripening, how many of you have worked with ripening rooms? You've been in them? Okay. Most ripening rooms are set, the alarm goes off at 68 degrees. Because bananas usually get ripened at anywhere from 60 to 64 degrees. That's usually it. That's the mainstay. Once you get above that, you're cooking your fruit because you're shortening your shelf life. You're increasing the respiration of the fruit and it's dehydrating more and you're shortening the shelf life. It's all about shelf life at retail. So we've changed some of these recipes and made them at a lower temperature to make so we have more marketable product at the end, more days. But you hear in the fresh cut industry, Oh, that retailer wants 14 days shelf life on a mango. I tell him he's nuts. I tell him 8 days. 8 days you're gonna have good flavor, and you'll learn later, I don't know if Dr. Jeff Breck's gonna talk about it, but a mango will produce carbolic acid after a while. It turns it into a salamander and it tastes like crap. We've all had it, I think, somewhere along the line. You've had some fresh cut produce that just was slippery and didn't taste good, and you're not gonna come back and buy it again. So anyway, that's the nutshell of that one. So you have sources, the internet, a little bit fuzzy on that one. Produce Facts, UC Davis. I'm telling you. Oh, and if you want to use a good search engine, dogpile.com. It's a meta search engine. It searches all the other search engines. It doesn't weave you to what Google wants or Yahoo wants. It searches everybody. It's just called dogpile.com. Next, please. Oh, and back up, commodity groups. They do a lot of research. They pay UC Davis, they pay University of Florida, they pay the University of Texas, whatever. Every state has some research going on that some commodity board, I don't care if it's from corn, soybeans, it doesn't matter. Grapes, Grape Commission. These different commissions and boards want research, and they hire professors to do that research, and they share that research amongst their commodity board. That's how these ripening programs started. I've worked with kiwi, with pears, with tomatoes, with avocados. There's not a commodity board in the United States that had a ripening program I didn't work with. I don't sell stuff. I just work with commodity boards. But I'm here to sell an idea or research or information so that you can do better at your jobs. And then at PMA or sometime you see me a year later, you change companies, went somewhere else, and you call me up and say, hey, we need some help here. That's what it's about. You know, it's progress, getting better information, getting better products for your customers.
Is there any conflict within the organic certification between Mexico, US, or Canada in the use of ethylene for ripening?
Yes, there is. And I've actually testified before the National Organics Board 5 times on ripening. And when I first did it, there were 5 people on the board, 1989. Now there's 13 people on that board, and 7 of them from Fortune 500 companies. They're an ad hoc committee for the Secretary of Agriculture. There's a lot of politics there, but why can bananas, organic bananas, use ethylene and organic avocados aren't supposed to? Or organic pears aren't supposed to? But I have a recipe I use, and it works. And the Organics Board can't do anything about it. I'm not going to tell you what it is. No, true, I do. Because what do you think a pile of rotting fruit gives off? And ethylene in really large amounts. So when I worked in India, I don't have that slide, but when I teach at the fruit ripening workshop in April, I show a picture of the largest pear warehouse, mover, wholesaler, whatever, in India. And what does he have right in the front of his bodega? I mean, his big warehouse? Probably about 3 tons of rotting pears. Because they throw them out there, and then they wonder why their pear displays after a while start ripening on them when they bring them out, and they have to rotate those through, and then it gets in the warehouse. So I went in there with the gas testing kit to test for ethylene. He had enough ethylene in there to start ripening his pears. Lucky he was, keeping them at 32 degrees, but it was amazing. But that pile, when the wind would blow in, off the loading dock, rotting fruit gives off ethylene. But yes, there is differences, and sometimes you just have to smile at what's out there, but a lot of people do different things. I mean, you showed earlier, Dr. Mitchum showed a tomato warehouse with a generator on the side, and some of the organic tomato people, I know they're using ethylene. It's just like, I know some of the people on the organic side of produce are using ripening inhibitors, and they're not supposed to. But people do it, because there's no USDA guy going out looking for it, and it's hard to test for it.
Let me jump in here really quick. While we're talking pears, it's a great example to me. So there aren't a lot of new varieties in pears. Has anybody seen any new in the marketplace? You see all kinds of apple varieties, but you see typically the same Bosc, Bartlett, d'Anjou pear. Here to tell you right now, ripe is the new variety of pear. If you've ever had a good ripe pear, there is such a huge difference between a rock hard, bless you, a rock-hard, starchy Anjou pear and a ripe pear. The pear industry follows along with the apple industry. Think about that a little bit. Same shipper base, typically grower base. And when fresh cut came out in apples, they said, you know what? Let's fresh cut pears. We have them in the same warehouse. They follow along the same lines. So what did the industry do? We cut rock-hard pears. Do you want a rock-hard apple with sugar? Sure. That's a good thing in most people's boards. Do you want a rock-hard, starchy pear? No. We have to adjust to the product, to the commodity. And I think it's a very good illustration of how we have to take this training and bring it back to a specific commodity, to a specific industry, and make it correct for that opportunity.
You know, one thing to remember, anything that you can store for a long period of time has a lot of starch in it. That's why you can store it. So it's in using it internally, even at lower temperatures. It's still using some of that to give its life going. But as Dr. Cater said once a long time ago, he was one of the ones that was the brain trust of starting all these outreach classes and seminars and workshops. And he told me once, he said, just because you can store it 10 months doesn't mean you're going to have flavor after 7 months. But you have nothing to compare it to. But that's why a lot of these companies have invented ripening inhibitors. Yes, I think they're good for some things. I mean, before Dr. Mitchum had a couple of companies up, this stuff called the peel that they're putting on avocados. How many of you open up an avocado and you can't even peel the skin away from the meat anymore, or it's kind of got a rubbery texture to it? You know, that's bad science as far as I'm concerned. It works really good on asparagus and carrots and grapes and other items. But to me, a ripener, I want something that ripens, develops, has flavor. And then at that point, it's about temperature. It really is. And sometimes cold chain does not mean cold. I know in the fresh cut side, you have to get below 41. I mean, believe me, I worked for the tomato industry 21 years. You don't think we were blamed for a lot of crap that wasn't us? Onions and peppers and chicken on a cutting board. Tomatoes get blamed for it all the time, you know, as being the bad guy. But we've learned a lot, you know, through that. But yeah, you do have to get it cold once you cut it. But you could try these new methods of how about cooling the fruit the day before you cut it. Don't let me walk into a warehouse and that's our pineapples and we have to keep them in here 6 days before we cut them. You've lost flavor. But if you have like a Thermaltech ripening room or some forced air room where you can cool that overnight down to 39, 40 degrees before you cut it, just overnight, you're still going to have some flavor in your product.
But let's go back to supply chain on that. A lot of processing facilities are refrigerated all the way through. And so there aren't facilities to keep mangoes, which should never go below 50 degrees. So mangoes come in their warehouse for 3 days before processing, but we move them into an environment that's 41 degrees. We're restricting that flavor. We're causing potential damage to that product. So to Dennis's point, we have to think about the right condition to hold, then bring down the temperature right before processing. It's another step, it's another piece. I know we're running out of time now, and I want to make sure if there are any questions for Dennis or myself, that we had the opportunity to ask those or answer those.
Now one thing you have to know, there is no such thing as a dumb question. The dumb question is one you don't ask. So if you have, go ahead.
Can you go back to the science of banana ripening? It's forced air plus temperature plus time plus ethylene.
Right.
And so I just wanted to confirm that that is what it does. So the forced air part of it, I think is maybe what we're missing. So
Well, I can talk to you on the side and tell you some different things, but yeah, forced air is really, it revolutionized ripening. And it was coming on when I first started with avocados, thank goodness. Because we had to use just air stack them. We had rooms with lots of fans, and people thought that was forced air. No, you're talking about making a negative air pressure so the air has to go through a pallet. And that's what creates, right now I can take pallets and get a 0.5 degree temperature differential in whatever's in there, because the science of the ripening rooms has advanced so much. And there's some bad ones out there. You can spend some money and they'll work a little bit, but they don't work to the best of the ability that's available.
After you condition avocados, what is the ideal temperature that you were mentioning, 38? What's the ideal temperature to store at after it's been?
Depends on the dry matter of the fruit. And let's say if you ripen them at 68 degrees,
Yeah.
and you have a Thermaltech room or a forced air room that's really good at cooling, I would take it down to 50, 52 for a little bit, and then take it down to 40, 42. I would step it down because you can shock that fruit too. And avocados are the most susceptible to chilling injury 3 days after harvest and 3 days after reaching climacteric point of ripening. And that's according to Dr. Mary Lou Apea. And that's what I learned from and go to for questions. But you can throttle it down, but there again, you can shock the fruit. But I guarantee you, right now at retail in the United States, 20% of all avocados are chill damaged. I'll just throw that out there because I've seen it.
And there's an art and a science.
Yeah.
It comes time of year, producing country, all of those factors.
Your dry matter, your oil content, yeah, it's really, there was an interesting article about Chipotle, about stringy avocados in USA Today, and it was just a lot of bad science in there people were talking about.
One last question, anyone?
Well, we'll be around. So, and we're gonna have some ripe pears. I was supposed to get them yesterday. I just got a notice earlier before it came up that we have some. So tomorrow we'll be able to taste some differences, and we have some mangoes for that too.
You mean actual ripe mangoes?
No, we're gonna make you eat those.
No. Yeah, we bought those yesterday. That was bought at a local grocery store. A lot of times I shame the stores I say,
Yes.
but you know, it's all out there. You know, and people, the number one reason people shop a grocery store is produce. There's no more swinging beef anymore. It's produce. So, and like I said, we return with our taste buds, not our eyes, because you know you had a good experience. California Tree Fruit Agreement did an experiment once when they had a bad peach. It took people 3 weeks to come back to have another peach. And I just learned in April this year in California, there were 180 varieties of peaches harvested this year in California. That blows my mind. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.